Okay, awesome. Thank you all for being here today. If you have questions, feel free to add them in the chat. We'll try to answer them as we go. And if not, we'll just wait towards the end and then answer your questions. I am Karen Medina. I've been at NAV for about 4 years. I am a recruiter, so I do bring in a lot of awesome people like G. So very excited to be here. I started recruiting for UX designers about 4 years ago. So when I started at NAV, and I feel like I learned the hard way because I looked at it feels like millions and millions of resumes and portfolios. So this is where my background comes from. I love hiring for UX designers. It's really fun, and this topic specifically, it's my favorite by far. So I'm super excited. And Gia and I thought that there was so much information on your portfolio alone in case studies. So then we actually are doing like a 4 series session or session series, whatever, however that goes. That's what we're doing. So the first one is the case study. So I'll talk a little bit about that. I'll show you a portfolio. I'll talk about why it's important, the purpose, and then just kind of seeing it from a recruiter that's not a designer. But again, I'm your first barrier, right? Like I'm the first person that gets you to the next level. So that's what I'm gonna be talking about. And I'll just have G introduce herself really quick, and then I'll start my part of the conversation.
Sweet, thanks, Karen. Yeah, I'm so excited everyone's here. Thanks for joining us. This time we are talking about intro to case study. I'm super excited. So for those who don't know me, my name is G. I was a bootcamp newbie about a year ago. I graduated or got certificate from Springboard May, and I found this job around August, I believe. It feels like eons ago. And then ever since then, I've just been helping other junior designers just navigate the job search, just because it's rough out there. And when Karen approached me about this, now called the UX Coffee Chat, we thought it was like an amazing idea, kind of really giving a unique perspective from the bootcamp newbie who just found her first job, and also the recruiter that discovered her and that also brought her on. So I hope that you guys will take a lot from this. The intro to case study is going to be really helpful for those who are just starting out to building their portfolio. Maybe you're at a tail end of the bootcamp, or you've just recently graduated and you're kind of starting the journey. So hopefully this will kind of answer a lot of like the questions in terms of like the building blocks and the basics of it. So I'm going to shoot it over back to Karen. She's going to go over some really high level important things and like the basics.
Perfect. Thank you. Awesome. And when I'm presenting, I get a little nervous, so I tend to talk really fast. So if at some point you need me to slow down, please just let me know. I will not take it personal, okay? So just so you know. Awesome. So why is the portfolio important? To be honest, and I don't know that I should be saying this, but it's the first thing I look at. So when I'm going through applications, I immediately go to the portfolio before I even look at the resume. Because what happens is that I'm trying to see if your design style matches our design style. So, because really, like, I can teach you, right? I can teach you about our company, NAV. I can teach you about what we do, but I cannot teach you to be a different designer, because you already know what designer you want to be. You already know your style. You already know, who you are as a designer. So that's why it's hard for me. Like, if, let's say, your portfolio is about, I don't know, applying for a video game company, it's going to be completely different than a fintech company, right? So then at that point, we're not a match. You're an awesome designer, just not a match for NAV. So I would encourage you that if you're applying for a company, or you're very excited about a company, look at their website first to see if their style matches yours, because then that will get you a step closer to there, right? Or if you're like, hey, I just really want to work for that company, then make sure that your style gets closer to that as well, okay? Because at this point, I'm like, okay, like NAV, our style is clean, easy to read, easy to follow, because as you know, right, financial stuff sometimes gets a little dreading and boring. So then we make it as beautiful as possible, as easy to read, as easy to follow. So FYI on that. Also, the purpose of your portfolio is really to help us understand who you are as a designer, what you're accomplishing, and really like a story, right? So I really want to know okay, what is it that they're trying to solve? What is it that they did to solve this problem? And what was the solution? That's what I'm looking for. I'm not a designer. I don't need to go over all the details. I don't need to hear, everything that you're doing step by step. I don't. But I do need to understand your thought process. So this is why it's important to have that portfolio. Also, I don't need 20 cases. Sometimes I do have over 300 applications, if not more. So I don't have time to look through all your cases, right? So if you give me, I think 5 and 6 for me are perfect. Like that's what I'm looking for. That's what I'm excited about. That's just about the right amount for me. So yeah, and now I'm gonna share a portfolio from a UX designer that I hired. Her background was in architecture design, and then she's a UX designer now. But she was able to tell me her story through her portfolio. So this is why I really wanted to show hers, because she changed it, right, to really have that clean design that we have at Nav. And then in her portfolio, I got to see the design. I mean, in her resume, I got to see the design, and then I got to see how her architecture background matched the UX and how it all came together. So, see. Okay. Okay. So, can everybody see my screen? I just always want to double check because sometimes I add different screens. That's not what we're doing here. Perfect. Okay. So this one right here, and just really quick, G and I did a session before this one where we talked about how to structure your portfolio, when it comes to your project, your profile, contact information. So you can see that information in the video, in the sessions before. I believe G posted it in her profile. But if you do need it, please reach out to us and then we can direct you in that direction. Okay. So we're gonna look at Tiani. She is a current UX designer at Nav. And then she has her cases here, right? So she gives me 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Perfect for me. Again, I'm not gonna look at all of them. So here I like that she talks about the title, like what it is that they were doing. I was like, okay. So I'm already like, if it looks very clean and crisp, right? Like Nav, what I'm looking for the company. So I love. So when I hire, we usually hire for the future, right? 6 months in advance, what's happening, what does this person need to have in order for me to hire them? So I knew at the moment in time when I was trying to hire Tiani, I knew that insurance was one of the things that was coming up. So this is why I clicked on this one. Also, if you do go to the website and see, right, you might be able to get a vibe of what the company is working on. So I would highly encourage you to add something as close as you can to what they're working on, or something where you can share a really good story. So in this case, I knew insurance. I was like, oh, I was intrigued. Maybe she didn't know, but that was probably like the closest thing that she could have added for her portfolio. Okay. So clean. I love this, right? I'm like, oh, this is beautiful. It looks super good. And then here she talks about, again, what I'm looking for again is what she's solving for, what somebody's solving for, what they did, their thought process, how it worked, and what was the overall solution. Like what came out of all of this that you were trying to solve. Okay, so that's what I'm looking for. So I'll slow down this one, but usually it's the same as the resume. 30 seconds, I'm looking at it. Like I go by it quick because I have so many to look at. Okay, so FYI, keep that in mind. So right here, she talks about what the company wants to change, right? The why, the how, the why, the how, the why, the how. She also talks about what she can do to help with that change. She talks a little bit about the customer, which at Nav, we're very customer driven, which I believe a lot of companies are very customer driven. So this is really important for her to have this, because at the end of the day, like I'm selling you as well. Like I'm selling you to the hiring manager to be like, hey, like they're customer driven, right? They looked at competitors. Like this is why we should move forward with the person just based on the portfolio, even before I talk to you. Okay, so FYI. So right here, she talks about competitors. She gives us an image of what she did. So I'm already following along. I'm already intrigued. I'm already in, right? I'm like, oh, I like it already. Right here, she also talks about the persona. I know that we all want like everybody in the world to be our customer, but we have to be very strategic and really find out who is our customer, why, and what can we do to help them. So she has her persona. I love this. She got really, really into the detail on who they are, which I love, right? I love because it helps me understand the way that she's starting to think about the problem. And then here, I'm always a sucker for a good sticky note. I love them. I don't know why, but I just imagine any designer, anybody that's creative, just really like putting sticky notes on a whiteboard, on a wall, wherever it is, and really, really thinking through the problems and how they're going to solve it. So this is why I love this, because then I can see that, okay, they really are thinking about it, and this is where it is. Okay. And then also she gives us, like easy to navigate. So she's starting to map out the process. She talks about how the customer are going to move through the process. And then she talks about the optimization of the experience, which is amazing, right? Like UX designers are looking for experience for customers is amazing. Like I love to see this. I'm like, okay, she's really thinking about the process, what's next, what needs to be happening. So I love that. Okay, and then here, I love to see a good hand design. So if you're ever designing anything by hand, don't throw it away. Add it to your portfolio because it's amazing. To me, it gets me really excited because I get to see the passion that you have as a designer. When you have this turn into this, like it's amazing, right? To see that because I'm like, oh, like this is so cool. This was like their idea, and then they did this. How cool is that? So it's really, really awesome. Then here she has more, just different designs that she made for tablet, desktop, mobile. At that time, also, I know that we were going to push really hard on our mobile app. So this also helps me to sell you to the hiring manager and to the team, okay? Because there's things that are coming up that I know about. And then here, there's more, right? Like just more designs that she made. She talks about the usability testing, which is amazing. And then at the end, she has a reflection, next steps. And then sometimes, sometimes if you can, and if you have the data to show like, I don't know, increase customers by 20%, that's perfect, add it in there. But sometimes we understand that you have projects that maybe are ongoing, right? So, or that you just finished. So we don't have the updates yet. But this is a good ending to it. Like this is a reflection and these are the next steps. Like I love to see that because I love to see, again, the story, the beginning, the middle, and the end. So I do love this. Also, I would highly, highly encourage you. So when, like what I like to do after I see this, I do my interview, I do ask in my interview, like, tell me, let's go over your portfolio. And I want you to talk to me about the one that's the case that you were the most excited about. Okay. Because I get super excited, like with when you as a designer start telling me, your thought process and why you were so excited and why you learned and why you want to do this. It just gets me really excited, and it's easier for me as well to sell you to the next level, to the hiring manager, to the team, to like, hey, maybe they're a little junior, but like their passion is gonna go a long way. Like they can do X, Y, and Z. So I do love that. So if you can, I highly encourage you to add an additional case that maybe you're super excited that you did a passion case about, because that's the one that you should definitely talk about. And if the hiring manager or the recruiter are like, oh, well, tell me one more about, like this one that's obviously closer to our company, that's perfect. But at least you can open with a lot of passion, and then your next one can be, your same level of passion. I feel that really does go a long ways, not just with the recruiter, but with the hiring manager and with the team as well. So keep that in mind. And that is all that I had for my presentation. I'm gonna send it over to G, the super expert UX designer. I feel like she's growing, she's doing amazing. Thank you, and G, tell us more information.
Thanks, Karen. That was awesome. A couple of things I wanted to point out is actually something that I've never really thought about until actually now, is you kept saying that, you're selling us to the hiring manager. And I think that's such a cool concept because it makes me realize, like, when building out the case study in the portfolio, we need to make it easy for the recruiter to sell us. And usually I think like recruiters get a really bad rep. We're always complaining about how like horrible they are, but they're not. They're our cheerleaders.
Dang.
Yeah, it's just the way. If you go on LinkedIn, that's all it is. But really, like recruiters are our cheerleaders. We need, once we show the portfolio and sell ourselves to them, they are the one that's cheerleading us on and like wanting to really sell us to hiring managers. So that's really awesome. But another point that I wanted to make was the portfolio that she showed and the format that T or the designer uses is kind of like a very cookie cutter. So we tell the story in terms of like the UX process. So breaking it down between understand, define, ideate, prototype, validate. And probably 95% of all junior portfolios and case studies are going to use that format. It is a cookie cutter format, but it works and it's proven to work over and over and over again. So if anybody ever have the question like I did, is that at the end redundant or boring? Like it's not, it's just a very easy way, very clear-cut way for us to tell our story. From my research, the more senior a UX designer gets, that format starts to shift a little bit more because they are working on projects that are very complex and complicated and there's a lot of things going on. But for us newbies, our case study is pretty straightforward, and that format is just, if you are thinking of not following it because it's cookie cutter and it's too boring, just understand that it's not. It's just an easy way to tell the story. So Karen was kind of going over like the building blocks and like the physical things that builds the case study. I wanted to go over more of like the process that I took with my case studies, more of like a hindsight. All right, a lot of these are the mistakes I made, and if I were to do it again, this is exactly how I would go about it. So I broke down the process just like how you break down the UX process. So to understand, define, ideate, prototype, and validate. So going to the first one, which is the understand, it's really important for us to understand where we are in terms of the market standard. So how do we compare to other candidates? When Karen is getting 300 other application, how good are they? How good is their portfolio? How good is their resume? And our goal is to be above the standard. That's the only way we're going to get hired. If we're below the standard, who would want us, right? And in order to be above the standard, we need to understand it. So the easiest way is to take a look at other candidates' portfolio, and I'm talking a lot. So the easiest way is in LinkedIn. Again, this is one of the many reasons why someone who is job hunting needs to be active in LinkedIn and grow their network, because they'll have resources to a lot more. So over the time, when you connect a lot and you connect with other recruiters, you'll start to see posts where the recruiter's like, hey, we're hiring for junior designers, comment below with a link to your portfolio. And those usually have hundreds of comments. So what I did was I opened up every single one of them. You bet hundreds of portfolios, and I quickly skimmed through them. I didn't take a long time for each one. That's crazy. And then after you look at like hundreds of them, you start to really see the commonalities of all of them and where everyone's at and what the average is. And then once you kind of figure that out, then you start to understand where my portfolio, where my case study needs to be at in order for me to be considered for an interview. And that goes into my second point, which is as you're doing that, save all of the portfolios that you like. It could just be a bookmark, whatever is easy, quick. But save it, whether it's you like the UI or you like the way the case study is formatted or you like anything about it, even little details, because I promise you will never find it again when you're trying to refer back to it, right? It just gets lost in like the internet world. So save as you go, because those reference portfolios will save you. And for those who are not coming from the design background, we'll kind of view this as like stealing. There's no such thing as stealing and copying in design, unfortunately. It's all inspiration. So when later on, when you're building out your site and you're stuck on how to, how to portray something or how to communicate a certain information, then if you look through all those portfolios and someone did it in a way that gives you an idea, that's the purpose of it, right? So you want a handful of your like reference portfolios for you to refer back to along the way. So the second thing is like the define phase, which is, okay, so we did, we looked at hundreds of them and we did our research. Now we need to understand and dissect what is what. So as you're looking through them, you'll start to get an idea like, oh, this is a good one. Like, oh, this is pretty. You know, this is great. This one sucks. That's messy. They're never going to get a job. And the part of this is to dissect it and understand the why. So when you look at a portfolio, and you look at a case study, for example, Tease, the one that Karen just showed, like it's a great portfolio, right? It's great. The case study is easy to follow. But now we have to break it down and understand what is it that she did to make it easy to follow? What is it that she did that makes it a good portfolio? So it was a good case study because the visual hierarchies were great. Well, why is the visual hierarchies great? It's because she utilized different proportions of font, size, different type of colors, and the spacing. So all of that kind of goes hand. So you kind of really want to dissect every single little details like that, because then once you build out your portfolio, you kind of know exactly what you need to do and how you need to do it in order to achieve what you want to achieve. And another thing is, I'm a list person. I made a list of everything that is required, or like after looking at all of those portfolios, there are some common things that everyone had. And so I wrote like, this is what I need to have in my case study in order to be in par with the standard or above it. And then I also made lists of things that were great ideas that not necessarily every single one of them had, but something that I wanted to implement in my case study. And then that brings on to like the ideating part, which is something I skipped, and I really wish I did it because it would have made my life so much easier. And I believe this will also help save everyone's a lot of time. So I went straight from like my research or finishing out my boot camp straight into Squarespace, trying to build out my case study. So simultaneously, I was designing, I was thinking of the content, the copy, the images. I was picking typography and colors, and I was learning how to build a website through Squarespace all at the same time. And it was a hot mess, and I felt like my brains were scrambled and I was just unproductive. So I really wish that I ideated before I build out my site, just like how you hand sketch or you ideate your product before you move on to like a low fidelity or a high fidelity, same concept. So whether you build out your website in like a Figma, like a real quick rough, or you hand sketch it, or you make a list, whichever it is, I think it'll really help save the time. So I'm talking things like color scheme, a mood board if you go that route. What are the overall sense of how you want your portfolio to look? Is it what's the aesthetic? Is it whimsical, minimal, playful, bold, colorful, monotone, whatever your style is? Get an overall sense of that. Also figuring like what are your, what's the format, what's the margin, what's the layout? Like, do you want a full width or do you want like smaller margins? And again, this is where the reference portfolios will come in, because then you can take a look and you'll say, hey, I like the margin size of this. That's what my portfolio is going to be. So once you kind of gather all of that information, then when you move on to building the website, you're no longer designing and building at the same time. You're now just building. So you're taking everything you already designed and you're just literally plugging it in, and it'll make it so much easier. And again, make a list of things, either a mental note or a physical list of things that you want to implement or how you want your portfolio to be. I personally like hand sketches. I think some people did it through Figma first, but we all know how long things take to build in Figma. So hand sketch would be a lot more easier. So moving on to the prototype or the actual building. So once I wish that I ideated, then it's moving on to building the site. And there's a couple of things that I learned along the way. In terms of the actual platform and how to build it, that's something that we talked about in the previous video. So if you want to hear about it, definitely check that out. I personally use Squarespace. So my first thing that I learned is don't focus on perfection. Don't focus on optimization, because I will promise you your portfolio will never be perfect, and all of you will find a job before your portfolio is perfect. There's no such thing as perfect portfolio. So focus on just getting all of the bits and pieces in first when you're building out your case study. So, your header and your copy, and then the images you want to implement, and blah, 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 blah. And then after that, go in with fine tuning it in details, just kind of like how you build Legos. You're not going to go and build the little details in the edges first. You're going to start with the big pieces to build the base. And then from there on, you plug in the little things that creates the details. Same concept. Don't focus on perfection first, and don't focus on perfection in one section. Get all the sections out, get it all flushed out, and then go back in with little details. Honestly, if I followed that advice, I would have saved weeks. And then the second point is only build one case study at a time, or one case study first, actually. It kind of goes hand in hand with my first point. So the problem that I ran into was I built all of my 3 case study at the same time. So in the beginning, I'm new, I don't know absolutely anything what goes into building a case study, and I built all 3 of them. And then over time, the more feedback I got, I started implementing the feedback in all 3 case study, which takes time. The issue is that none of my case studies were even remotely good enough. And the changes that I had to make to them was so drastic that at the end, every single time I implement the same feedback to all 3 case studies was such a waste of time. So if I were to do it again, I would just do 1 case study and trying to really optimize that first, because the other 2 case studies are probably going to be following the same format or the structure, or like, for example, like this header font is going to be XYZ and the spacing is that is, XYZ, and this is how I'm going to portray my persona. So all the other case studies are going to be very similar. So if the first one you built out, you got feedback and you really optimize that, the second and the third is just all about plugging in the new information. And it's just going to make it so much easier versus trying to make and improve all 3 at the same time. And the third one is being strategic about what pages to build first is, hi, Kathy. The first is that you want to build your most favorite, exciting, and robust project first. For most of us, it's going to be a capstone because that is the most robust project that we worked on. And the reason for that is our goal is not to make a perfect portfolio. Our goal is to find a job. Portfolio is just a means to an end. So if someone is, and then this is a mistake I made too, if you're trying to build a perfect portfolio first and then find a job and apply, I promise you'll never get to the applying part because you'll always be working on your portfolio. So the idea of being strategic, what to build first, is if you build your favorite or your most exciting project first, once you have that case study kind of optimized, at least you have something to apply. If there was an opportunity that came your way and you were really, really interested, but the thing is, if you started with the worst case study, you have nothing to apply with. Versus if you started with a case study that you love first, at least you have that one. At least you have a little bit of slim chance. So that's the idea, is being strategic about what to build. And then the last section is the validate. So feedback is the most important, in my opinion, the only way anybody will ever get better. And one of the biggest ideas is that you look at your portfolio so much and you only know what you know. So how are you going to improve on it, right? If you get a third eye or another point of view, or someone who's a little bit more senior than you that can pick it out, they will probably pick out such obvious flaws that you couldn't see because you were the one working on it. You look at it, 25 hours a day. And so feedback is super important. Now, there's a lot of different people platforms you can seek feedback from, things like groups, Discord chats, Design Body is great. There's a UX cheer for those who are female. There's a bunch of others, I forgot the names. And also there are mentors like ADP List. UX Coffee Host is great. I know ADP List is the most popular, but UX Coffee Host is also my favorite. They're also an hour, not a 30 minutes, so that really helps. And then also just reaching out to other senior designers or anybody that's, you send them like a LinkedIn message. They don't message you back, then it is what it is. But if they're open to giving you feedback, that feedback will go a long way. So feedbacks are super important. And then also the biggest problem I had when receiving feedback is I went onto this endless loop of improvement. So every single one, everybody, it is a design industry at the end, so it's not scientific. There's a lot of gray area and everyone will have their opinion of what makes a perfect case study. It also depends on the company, depends on the recruiter, depends on the hiring manager. And the problem I went into was I would seek one feedback and then they'll say, oh yeah, do ABC. So I'm like, all right, I spent 30 million years making ABCD. And then I get my second feedback and they're like, no, C is not important. Actually, it's actually really bad to have it in your portfolio. Instead, do E. So I'm like, okay, so I spent another 5 billion years, implementing E, taking out C. And then I find another feedback, and you're like, oh no, C is a must. And I'm like, okay. So then I spent another 5 million years, and it just becomes an endless loop. So after a while, I treated it like how we treated user interview. So I sought feedback from 3 to 5 mentors. And then while receiving those feedback, I didn't touch my portfolio. Once I got those feedback, then I just took all the common major feedbacks that they had and then focus on those. So just like how we do our user interview, we don't interview one user and then implement the change and then interview someone else. We interview a pool of them so that we can have a good idea and understanding of what to focus first. Same concept. I would definitely suggest treating that with your feedback because it'll save time. It'll save a lot of time. And then also another another way to like validate or test your portfolio is this really applies to those who are doing an overhaul, kind of like you, Ed. And the way I tested it was after every major overhaul, I applied to 10 to 20 jobs, and I kind of waited a little bit. And if I didn't see the response I wanted to, or the response didn't change, meaning for me, I had zero response, then I know that my change was not good enough. Whatever I did is just not quite there yet. So then I would kind of go through, rinse and repeat everything, get some more feedback, improve again. And then once I feel like, all right, I feel good now, I would test it again, apply to another 10 to 20 jobs, no response, rinse and repeat. And then I got to a point where one day, I just applied to 20, 40 jobs actually. And then I got like 5 response back. So then that's how I knew, like, okay, the changes that I made in the last run was good enough, just good enough to get me interviews. So those are pretty much like the process that I found that pretty much ends my segment. But I hope that you guys got a lot of things from it. And I guess we'll be taking questions from here on if you guys if you guys have anything pertaining to the case study, cool. But if it's any other burning question, feel free to ask. But yeah. And if nobody has questions yet, I have questions for Karen. I always have questions. So while everyone's kind of thinking about their question, I wanted to ask Karen, with the case studies, what are some of like your absolute hates in terms of like the contents of the case study? What makes you like look at it and be like, oh no.
If they can't tell me a story, for sure. Like I think or they're really short where it's just like, this is what happened and the images don't match or they don't look good because you're a designer, you're applying to be a UX designer for a company. You're going to be the one designing everything for our customers, so it's really important that the things look good and like you were talking about, like the wording are correct, right? Like the font, all of that. But if somebody doesn't have that, or I can't get into your case, that's also a problem because I'm like, I have to move on at that point. So make sure, and I say this I think I say this in every session, but make sure your links work, please.
Yeah, oh, for sure. Oh, we have a question. So how makes a portfolio really stand out from all the other hundreds you look at? Oh, that's a good one.
There's a good one. I think for me, when I look through all of my applications, and then we do have like a specific link where we do ask for the portfolios, and it's the first page, to be honest. Like if that first page looks a little messy, I have to move on. But if that first initial face of your portfolio looks clean, like, okay, I'm looking at it, and then from there I click on the case studies. So it just kind of depends. I know this sounds really weird, but looks are everything when it comes to your portfolio. So yeah, I think once, like, depending if, like I said, right, if it's a clean page from the beginning, I'm hiring for a clean designer because that's what our website looks like, then I'm in. But if it's something different, I have to move on. I can't, like, and it's, again, 30 seconds, just like the resume.
I wanted to build on that question. Is there anything specific to a case? Let's say let's say you got past the first page and you look into case studies. Is there anything specific about the case study portion that makes them really stand out?
I think just like the one that I was showing about T, right? Just like really clean and structured and able to tell me a story from like what she was solving, what her work was in it, and what was the end goal. That really stands out to me. Like that, I have to follow along. Again, I'm not a designer, but I can follow a good story, right? So that's what I need to see.
So this is actually quite interesting. So the two things that Karen always are mentioning is able to scan or easily, digest information, and also storytelling. Everyone's already heard of storytelling by now. Those, we are going to be talking about those in depth in the next two series, so definitely stay tuned. But yes, that's interesting how you always kind of goes back to those two. Cool. We have another question. So wondering if you guys tend to look at portfolios or mobiles or desktop more frequently.
I usually look at it in desktop. I have not tried to look at it in mobile. So usually I am in desktop. I'll double check. I do have the app for it. I just can't click on a lot of things in the app for we use Greenhouse. I can't really click on a lot of the links, just your resume. So I'm always looking at it on the desktop for sure. And then Ed had another one. Karen, at what point do you look at resume and do you have a format you like? At what point? I look at the resume right after that first page of the portfolio, and if I click on the case and that looks clean, then I look at the resume right after that. And what was the other part of it? And a format that I like. I like anything but PDF. So somebody gives me a PDF and I cannot. I'm sorry. Sometimes if I'm not super busy, I do reach out to people and I'm like, hey, is there something else? Because I cannot. But if I'm busy, if I'm back to back, like right now where I'm like heavily hiring, I can't. I just have to move on. So to me, anything that shows me that you're an awesome designer, just not PDF, and that's just preference for me. Because again, the job that you're applying for, I need to be able to see that you can like build awesome things, right? Specifically on a website thing, like that you can give me a page with your portfolio. That's why.
Do you mean when you said with the format of not liking PDF, are you talking about like the resume format, or are you talking about like
I was thinking about portfolio. Is that what the question was? Or
Sorry, I was thinking of like I actually have Squarespace as kind of my hosting site. So,
that's perfect.
and the way you upload it, it would be a downloadable PDF. So, I mean,
Mhm.
that's not a concern. You're talking about a whole portfolio that is of a PDF.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Okay. So,
Yep.
thank you.
Perfect. Yeah, thank you. Do you recommend doing case study on the field company that you are really interested in? I don't know. I think yes and no. I think if you're really interested in the specific company, you should. But then again, I believe doing your case studies take a long time for what I've learned from G. So it just depends, right? But I think maybe I would recommend doing it on the field, not just a company, because that way, on the field you'll get more wide range instead of the company you'll get one specific thing. And then you don't know, right? Because you don't know internally if they're trying to rebrand, if they're trying to do other things. So then that's why I would maybe go for the field and instead of the company itself on that. Okay, and then make a first page more in a fun style makes you look at the portfolio or less professional. I don't know. What do you mean with fun? Because I've gotten it all, right? Like I've gotten some where it's like I see it and it's definitely like it is definitely a video game company or it's some sort of widgets that have nothing to do with what we do. It's a lot of comics. So I personally don't love that. But if you have it like the one that I show with Tiani, right, where hers was, it was cute. Like the images that she made, it was cute. It was about, although it was about insurance, it was still kind of cute. Like I can take that. I don't think that's unprofessional. But the other stuff where it's like different widgets that have nothing to do with your case, I don't know that I would love that. Like not for what I'm hiring for enough.
I think so I think fun is a very broad word. I think it depends on your style in the company. So some people's natural style is more whimsical and it's more fun, it's more colorful and a lot of playful. I tried looking up a portfolio I really loved. She had like her URL was Summer Chestnuts. So she had a little like chestnut, and everything about it was super fun. There was little like motion graphics. But there's a way to make something fun and whimsical and still yet very sophisticated and elevated. And that's what everyone is, looking for. So if you tend to go more towards the wild side, the more fun, just make sure that your designs are still sophisticated. Nav, my personal style, I'm very minimal and very structured. So, the case studies that I saved in my reference portfolios tend to be more that way. And only reason why not the only reason, but one of the reasons why I got hired at NAV is because I connect my aesthetic, my minimalistic and clean aesthetic kind of connects with them. So if you are leaning more towards fun and that is your natural style, it's going to be excruciatingly painful for you to design something that's minimal and fun. So you want to seek out companies that also kind of have the same aesthetic as you. And again, really practicing a UI skill and really making sure that as much as fun it is, it's also very sophisticated. Check out like Duolingo. I think Duolingo does a really great job of making things fun, but it's not like cheesy and tacky. We got another question. Let's see. In my case studies, I want to showcase the deliverables I completed in my projects, but sometimes it seems like that distracts from the storytelling aspect. Is there a format you've seen that can achieve both without you just being a list of things you did? I want to showcase deliverables.
I'm curious. I have a follow-up question for that because I want to understand, like, is it a long list? Are you putting I can never say the word deliverables under where it says like your findings? Is that what you're talking about?
Nice. I can elaborate just a little bit.
Yeah.
No, so just in my case studies, I really tried to showcase, things I've done. So for like example, like user interviews is like a really standard one across the board, right? But I think that what I'm trying to showcase within like that storytelling, I did interviews, I did journey mapping, X, Y, and Z. It kind of pulls away from like the narrative sense of the case study. So it becomes a little like cookie cutter and a little less like organic, I guess is the way I would put it. So just wondering if you've seen examples where both are accomplished.
Yeah, I think what I've seen it more, I've honestly have seen it in the resume a little more, like specific, the details. So once you have, maybe I wouldn't put all of that detail in your portfolio because again, we don't have time to read all of it. And that's really important information that you want to share. So then I would say it in the resume and then talk about it in your interview because like, I know that for G as well, right? Like she didn't have a lot of experience like in the different jobs, but she did have experience. Like she showed me her projects, and then in her resume she talked about like what she learned from the project. So she was like, I learned, right? Like I did journey building, or I did this, and then this was a solution. And she had that on top of the resume, like in the first 2 blocks. So I would connect it back to the resume and then just do like top 3 bullet points in your portfolio. And like even if you go and look at the job description, if they talk about like what we're looking for in a designer, even looking at those first 3 bullets, that's what you add in your portfolio because you know that that's what they're looking for. That's what I've seen that works.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Yeah, did that answer your question?
Yes, it did.
Okay, okay, perfect. Thank you. Okay, let's see. If you are pivoting from a different industry, what is the best way to bridge that to show you have a prior experience? Oh, I love this question. Do you want to answer this one first, G? Because I hired 2 people that were pivoting industries. Because I hired G that was coming from, was it swimsuit designing that you started doing, like fashion design? And then I hired an architecture designer that moved into UX. So the experience I think here was, like I said, with G's, I remember she had her case studies of what she learned. So it was very broad. I don't remember that if you had anything about your fashion stuff in there in your portfolio, I can't remember. But she connected it that way with what she learned in her boot camp, which I loved. And then she connected it back to the resume. So she had the top boot camp stuff. She talked about, again, the case studies. And then at the bottom, she had that designer experience from fashion, right? Because it wasn't relevant at the time, but it is, because it's just a different type of design that you bring along. So that's what I seen. I mean, it worked for me because I hired both of them. So that's what I've seen work. Like, you don't completely have to, delete, erase that past life, but you can add it and then just make sure that you connect it back to what you're trying to accomplish in the next job that you're looking for.
I wanted to actually, I wanted to share the screen for my portfolio so that everyone can see what Karen is talking about. But this is how I thought, and I wanted to see if this was actually a valid thought, Karen, and I don't think I ever asked you. So for me, the way I understood it was the portfolio isn't where you would showcase your previous experience. Yes, your previous experience would help you be a better UX designer, and that's what you're showcasing in your portfolio, who you are as a UX designer. I think showcasing what your previous experience is more for the resume. Am I correct, Karen? Would you agree?
Mm-hmm. I would agree, yeah.
Okay. So yeah, so my portfolio didn't have anything to do with Smear. It was strictly UX design. And then let me share my screen with my resume. So this is the resume I submitted to NAV. And the first one I had was projects, which was the projects I did in Springboard. But as you can tell, I didn't write anything that would make it sound like I'm a student, like no Springboard, no, projects, no boot camp, none of that. And then I have my experience, which I put my UX experience first. So I didn't put my resume. I know the I guess like the go-to format for a resume is chronological order, but that's not necessarily always the best way, especially for career changers, because anything that we do it's not gonna, like if you're currently working, I was unemployed, so it might have worked for me. But if you're currently working, then that means that your current job would go first, and that's not the first thing you want them to see. The first thing you want them to see is something UX related. And then underneath, I put my 2 swimmer or fashion design job. And something that I did want to point out is one reason why I didn't put anything in my portfolio is because no one cares. When Karen is looking for a UX designer, yes, it'd be nice to know my background as a swimmer designer and how that kind of navigates, and that's why I left it in my resume. But at the end of the day, she is hiring, and all recruiters are hiring for UX designers and what you can bring to the table as UX designer. So even like in this bulletin points, everything that I wrote about, I didn't talk about what I did as a designer. I talked about what I did as a designer that would mean something to them. So what can I bring to the table for them? So everything I talked about, anything with establishing, building, because I knew NAV was more of like an entrepreneurial mindset. So I wanted to hone in on that. And then also, every industry has their own lingo. So I made sure I used UX as lingo. So for example, when I say, from concept design to initial sketches to prototypes, those are UX design lingo. In fashion world, you don't call it that. You call it hand sketches to samples and then production. So those are some of the ways where you can showcase, for those who are pivoting, how to kind of connect the bridge. It's not enough to say, oh, I used to be a fashion designer. You figure out what's the commonalities, and you figure out what I can bring to the table. It's more about, I used to be a fashion designer, and I'm going to tell you why that means something to you. So that's the way I went about it.
Yeah, that was really helpful. Thank you. So
I'm glad.
We can do just this last one question. That's okay, because we're almost up in time.
So what program did you build your resume? So I built it. I built it in Figma. It worked for everyone else. It didn't work for me. There's a website you can test like scannability. I think you can literally just say like, ATS, I don't know, test or whatever, and then they'll come up. My Figma files was not working. And so I did it in Illustrator. It still wasn't working. It wasn't parsing it at all. like when it parsed it, it would come up with symbols, not even like English. And so this one, I built it on Google Doc, and then I exported it into a PDF. But I don't know, other people found it, I mean, they found a job through Figma, and I don't know how, but the only thing is that, yes, with Google Doc, you can't make it as beautiful as, we all designers want it. So what I did was that beautiful version, that's the version I showed in my portfolio. So my portfolio had a little resume link in the top. When they click resume, they saw like the beautiful Figma version. But the version that I applied with is the PDF. But also, like, chances are they're not even looking at your actual PDF. There's a lot of systems that parses it and sends it into Recruiter, and it looks like utter crap anyways. So it doesn't really matter how beautiful it is.
Yes. Perfect.
Yeah.
Well, I think thank you all for your time. This has been, I feel like it went by really, really fast.
Karen, I have one more question,
Yeah.
if you don't mind answering. This is something I was curious about when I was job searching.
Okay.
Yes, everyone uses that cookie cutter format, the one that we've seen today, the one my portfolio uses, and probably 95% of others. Do you ever get bored of looking at that cookie cutter, or is that something what you begin to expect, and that's just makes it easier for you to follow along?
I don't know. I don't know, because I love it. I love to see those, but when I do get the different ones, like it's just like a curveball. It makes me like stop for a minute and be like, okay, let's look at this and see what they're doing. But I don't know. I don't know. I think maybe 50-50 on that one. I really just want to see like the designer, right? And how you showcase your work and who you are. So
Okay.
Yep.
That would have been very helpful for me. But yeah, thanks for answering that.
Yeah.
But yeah,
Perfect.
sorry for cutting you off. But thank
Oh,
you guys.
you're good. You're good. I was like, oh no.
So yeah, I hope everyone kind of got a lot, or at least something out of this. And I hope it was super helpful.
Yeah, perfect. And once we have the recording, we'll be sending it out so you can rewatch it or share it with your friends as well. And thank you all for joining. Remember, the next session is coming up, I believe, in 2 weeks. So that'll be part 2 of this. So hopefully we can see you all there.
Thank you guys. Bye.
Thank you.